Good morning and good afternoon, evening, I guess, to our youth and to our young adults, to our young teenagers. Today's topic, as you probably have already been told, is on marriage. The two shall become one. Of course, hopefully you know who I am, Deacon Tim, not to be confused with Deacon Bird. But as y'all have been going through the last several weeks, we've been focusing on the sacraments. And today we're going to talk about the sacrament of marriage. The two shall become one. And it is a sacrament of service. I think the first of two sacraments of service that you will cover. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in a little bit. But it is all about love, and you're going to hear a lot about love in today's the stuff that I cover. So let's start off with two questions. One, and I'm going to pause after each question, and I'll let y'all kind of talk about your class just for a few seconds. But the first one is, can you have a marriage without love? Can you have a marriage without love? Think about that a second. Okay, so the answer is no. Real marriage requires there be love between the husband and the wife. Now, you might turn the TV on. Maybe some of y'all might be too young to watch it. Maybe you see your parents watch it, your older siblings. But The Bachelor or Bachelorette, I never watch them, but you know, I'm not saying people can't find real love in there, but sometimes people are attracted to each other, and sometimes they confuse that simply for love. But in order and they get married, and in that case, they maybe find that they really don't love each other, and so that marriage really wasn't really a marriage. But for marriage to be real, there must be love there. Question number two. Can you have love without a marriage? Can you have love without a marriage? So take a minute. Think about that. Let your teacher know what you think. Okay? And the answer to that is indeed you can. Okay? So, in order to kind of help understand that, we can turn, and I trust we can see this up here, but you can see this beautiful artwork that I put up on the board. We got this big circle, and this big circle is love. Love is very prevalent in our lives. It's everywhere. It's in everything we do. And here you can see we've got this circle of marriage that's fully encompassed in this circle of love. It's part of love. It's one way, a very important way that we love. But we also love in our friendships and our family. We love in holy orders. Those people who serve as priests, as bishops, as deacons. They can also be married. Deacons can, but not the priests and the bishops, of course. But religious people, brothers, sisters, they too love in a different way. We're going to talk about that in just a minute. And then, of course, there are people who feel a calling to the single life. And there too, they are called to serve in a spirit of love. So all these are ways to love. So yes, you can have love without a marriage, as you see here. So what we're going to talk about is the types of love. And then we're going to talk about the characteristics of marriage, the purpose of marriage, and then I'm going to share a little personal information with you about my wife and my marriage, and just tell you how wonderful that's been, and to share a story with you at the end. So, the types of love. There's a philios love. What is that, Deacon Tim? That's a love between good friends. You know, you probably have a good friend. Maybe you enjoy going to hang out with them for the weekend, and you feel that bond, that friendship there. A lot of times you maybe see it on sports teams, these players, or any kind of team. People come together, they work for a common cause, and they develop a bond, and they enjoy being with each other. And that's kind of what we generally refer to as philios. There is familial. That really is a love between family members. For example, you may fight with your brother at home, okay, over something silly, and you may really get mad at him, and, you know, feel like you don't love him anymore, but indeed you do. But when you go to school and you see, if it's your younger brother, you see a bully picking on him, That's where you draw the line. You go to the help of your brother or sister there. And that's that familial love, that love that draws us to want to help, that makes, that makes that relationship with those we live with in our family very special. That's what familial love. And then there is romantic love, okay? And so that would be that love that really is that personal attraction. At first, romantic love really starts with a person's physical appearance. A young boy is drawn to a young girl because of the way she looks. That's kind of what gets it started. But over time, that romantic love begins to develop because we learn who that person is, what they believe, and who they are, and we begin to fall in love with that. And we're going to talk about how that goes a little bit beyond romantic love. Romantic love really is it's a partnership just for those two people. It's a love between a husband and a wife. So romantic love, unlike some of the other loves where you share that with different people, that romantic love is just between a husband and a wife. So it's like a special or unique love that is reserved between one man and one woman. That's what's unique about romantic love, okay? And you might see this, you might see that romantic love. You may have seen this if you're children between your parents, where they buy flowers maybe on special days, anniversaries, on their spouse's birthday, maybe where they write letters to each other, telling the other how special they are. I know I can still remember a letter I wrote to Miss Gloria, my wife, back when we were dating. It was a very special letter. It had very special meaning to her. And so these are things that really involve romantic love, where, again, it's between two people. And there are things that they only share between themselves. Sometimes it may be things that are difficult that they don't feel like sharing, or they can't really comfortably share with somebody else. Well, that's what a husband and a wife are for each other, to be able to share those things that are difficult to share with anybody else. And that's sort of romantic love, but it's sort of that marriage love, okay? So we've talked about philios, talked about familial, love between family members, romantic love, love between a husband and a wife, or maybe people who are engaged to be married, that special love that they begin to develop. There's the one type of love that really is present in all these rows up here is called sacrificial love. Again, this is not just in marriage, but it is a fundamental and ongoing effort, always present and always expected. It's not something where you can, just be available to love sacrificially. It's something that we're always expected to do, especially in a marriage. And again, as I mentioned earlier, this is why marriage, along with holy orders, are considered sacraments of service. Because when we say service, normally what we're doing is we're giving up some of our time and things we could be doing, fun we could be having, to help somebody else out. That's really what the definition of sacrifice is, and that's why we call it sacrificial love, and why we call this sacrament of marriage and the sacrament of holy orders in particular sacraments of service. Marriage is mostly defined by both that romantic and sacrificial love. Both are always present, okay? But it doesn't mean that we always feel romantic. Early on in our marriages or when we're dating, we feel those special feelings, those romantic feelings. And there's no reason, in fact, that's really the challenge in marriage for a married couple, to always try to feel that way. We get busy and we get preoccupied and distracted, and sometimes we tend to lose that very special romantic love that we had early in our relationship. But we're always called, and the romance should always be part of that relationship. But sacrificial love as well should always be there. And it is a love that type of love in a marriage that probably is more present, more lived out by the spouses. In a marriage that understands, couples that understand what they have to do. Okay? Now, this romantic and sacrificial love, does this mean that a husband and wife never fight? Well, I'd like to say yes, but the reality is no. That's part of marriages. People have differences, and we're all sinners, and as a result, sometimes we get a little selfish, and we can fight. We can think we're wrong, but as in a marriage, we're called to recognize that, and to be honest, to be humble, and to admit when we were wrong, and we work through that, and through that, both that love that we have, that a husband and a wife have for each other, they use that to overcome their differences, and as a result, to be an even stronger couple and have a stronger love as a result of getting through their difficulties. Is sacrificial love found only in marriage? And we've talked about that already. No, in fact, it's really more than a type of love. It is what I like to call a common denominator of love. Okay? And so we don't have it. You don't see that a circle up here for sacrificial love. Because again, as I mentioned earlier, it's really present everywhere. Okay? The last type of love, agape love. It is the strongest of all loves. You hear agape love talked about pretty much when we talk about how God loves us. Because part of or characteristic of agape love is unconditional. Now, for most of us, we usually attach conditions to, I will love you if you do this for me, or if you do that for me, okay? But agape love says there's no conditions, and that's how God loves us. And so we're always, maybe at times, we live out agape love, but it's hard because we're human and we can be selfish, as I said earlier sometimes. So that's the other type of love, okay? So that's the different types of love. The one that apply most to marriage is romantic love and sacrificial love. Now, let's talk about the characteristics of a marriage, okay? A marriage is between one man and one woman, okay? It's not more than, it's not two men and one woman, it's one man and one woman, very simply, okay? It is a sacrament. What does that mean? God ordains it. He even desires it, okay? And it's not made up by man, okay? This is something that God has called. It's not something that we, hundreds or thousands of years ago, somebody said, hey, let's call a union between a man and a woman marriage, okay? It's something that God ordained. He desires that. And he intends for marriage to be a way to bring children into the world, okay? And approves into the world, and approves and brings children into the world, okay? And so that's another very important characteristic of marriage. The two people who come into a marriage, they commit to remain married and committed to each other their whole lives until death do they part. So when people come to marriage, they can't be saying, well, let's try this and see how it works. No, that's not really a marriage. That's more of a relationship, and what we're going to get into right now. That's the difference between a covenant and a contract, okay? That's very important, okay? A contract. Think about your job a minute, or a job, okay? Think about a job that your mom or dad have. Your mom or dad work, and they get paid. And they get paid what they agreed to work for. So they have an agreement or a contract with their employer. I'm going to work and I'm going to get paid this much an hour or a day or for a year. And that's what they're supposed to get paid. The boss is obligated to pay them for that, and your mom and dad are obligated to show up at work every morning. There's certain conditions that go with that. That's called a contract. But then there's a covenant, okay? What's a covenant? What's the difference between that and a contract? There are obligations, but we don't keep track of those, okay? We don't keep track of how long somebody works and how much they get paid. In fact, after time, the people really don't see them as obligations, as something they have to do, but something they want to do, okay? To make the other person happy. There's no strings attached. There's no conditions, okay? That's the difference. And so when we talk about marriage, we're really talking about a covenant, where two people come together, and to the point where the other person is the focus of who they want to make happy. It's not themselves. It becomes the other person, is who they want to make happy. Okay. So those are the characteristics of a marriage. What is the purpose of a marriage? Why does God ordain marriage? The two become one. Okay. The first one is that they help each other through life's difficult challenges, and most especially help each other get to heaven. That's very important. I know in my marriage that's been very important. I can go on all day long and tell you how my wife, Miss Gloria, has helped me get to heaven. But that's number one purpose of marriage, is the two people are called together, the two become one, and together they help each other get to heaven. The other purpose of marriage, as we talked about a little bit earlier, is to have children. Without marriage, there would be no children, and society would no longer be around. And then finally, the purpose of marriage is to be an image, a reflection of the love that Jesus had for his church. And we know, well, you may know, and maybe you've heard this before, that Jesus is referred to as the bridegroom, and the church is the bride. It is this image, this marriage image. A lot of times you hear talked about at weddings. And the bridegroom is willing to go so far as to die for his bride, which is in fact what Jesus did. He sacrificed for his church to the point of dying on the cross, so we all of us who are part of the church, the bride of the church, we all can be saved. Well, the same image should be reflected in a marriage, where a husband and a wife are sacrificed for each other, where they love each other, and that should be visible. People should look at a couple and they should see where they help each other out, and even to the point, although it's you never see that really have to happen, but to the point where they're willing to die for each other. Okay, so now I want to close out and just share a little personal information. As I mentioned before, I'm married, and my wife is Gloria Messenger. You may have seen her at church. We were married on September 8th, 1984. Long before any of y'all were even born. That's a long time ago. 37 years and counting. And it's been a wonderful 37 years. I could go on and tell you how wonderful my wife has been. And she would have been here today, but she's kind of camera shy. But she did tell me to tell y'all this, that if she were here, this is what she would say. That Deacon Tim is the best husband that anybody could ever have. That he's just a great husband, so I'll just pass it on. If you believe that, well. But I do want to close with this story, just to show in marriage how people think about each other, and how Miss Gloria has been such a wonderful wife. We had been married probably about 10 years. We were living in California. And I think we were swimming in our swimming pool one day, and I lost my ring, my wedding ring. My wedding ring, I lost it. We looked around, we couldn't find it. Doesn't mean you're not still married, okay? Wedding ring is just a symbol. If you lose your wedding ring, or your mom or dad lose it, they're still very much married. But I lost my wedding ring. And I don't know, several months had gone by, and one night we went out to eat dinner. We went to a little nice restaurant, and as we're sitting there talking, waiting for our meal to come out, the waiter brought out a basket of bread. And so I sat there, and we continued to talk, and I hadn't grabbed any of the bread yet, and Miss Gloria said, "Don't you want some bread?" And I said, "Oh, I don't know." And she goes, "Yeah, it's really good bread." So, okay, and I started to look into the bread. Guess what was in the bread? Another ring. Miss Gloria had bought me another ring, never had even asked for it or thought about it. But it was just a very special, loving thought that she had. A thought, as I said earlier, that helps maintain that very important romance in a marriage. So, I know many of y'all are young, and maybe marriage is a long ways from you, but I think the message here is about marriage, and one day, if that's what God calls you to do, you'll have that opportunity. But in the meantime, we can still love, as I put up here, many ways. And maybe as we love in these other ways, it prepares us for how to love in marriage. Y'all have a great day, and thanks for having me on. God bless you.